Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope you're all fine. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all doing good today. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the science of pedagogy. Okay, I believe it is quite obsolete, fundamentally antiquated, and it needs a complete overhaul and a complete reboot. Okay, I've written about this extensively in the past, and I will summarize the gist of what I have written before, and I also add some new points to it. What is exactly is pedagogy? Pedagogy or pedagogy, actually, people are confused how to pronounce it. I believe pedagogy is the right way. It is the art, science, or profession of teaching according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Okay, and it refers to the various techniques, tools, methods, etc., involved in the practice of learning, and especially this is true in the case of a academic setting or as it refers to as a theoretical concept. Okay, and actually I have written quite a lot about pedagogy. Please refer to our paper on anthropological pedagogy. I have published it a couple of years ago. After that, I have written a paper on the sociology of science also, and more recently in the year 2024 I have written a book on pedagogy. It was published in Google Books. The earliest formal school of pedagogy was launched in ancient Egypt in the Middle Kingdom, and it was under the direction of Katie, who was a treasurer to Mentuhotep II. Okay, formal trades also was informal trading was also imparted to a small number of tribes in Egypt, scribes in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Egypt and Mesopotamia actually, Egypt used hieroglyphs and Mesopotamia they used cuneiform. It was very difficult to master, and it was specialized in only few small number of people were able to read and write in those days. And actually, small number of people could read and write Egypt, Mesopotamia, and most other ancient civilizations, and women were not allowed to read or write in most cases. However, during the Zhou dynasty of ancient China, there were national schools which taught different types of skills such as rites, music, archery, chariot riding, calligraphy, and mathematics. Also, in ancient India, we had the Indus Valley civilization. The Indus Valley civilization is the first civilization of ancient India. There, you had a script. Actually, there is a lot of controversy going on whether it had reached the linguistic stage or not. I believe it had because we had the Dolabira signboard, which demonstrates a random repetition of sites. But even a steam farmer argues probably a large number of people could read and write there, given the fact that it was used by merchants and traders. They may not have encoded speech to the extent, but it was encoded in other contemporary civilizations. However, it is all feasible that large number of administrative records existed based on the Dholavira signboard. Later on in the Vedic period, post Harappan India, the history of this period is a little bit hazy. But I believe I had written about literacy in post Harappan India. I had traced down the origin of Brahmi with a great degree of precision. You may read my papers. There was some knowledge, and there were Gurukula schools also then. And later we had Takshashila, and we had in Bihar also we had another center of learning, famous center of learning. Okay, most modern education, however, the concept of pedagogy as we know it today is derived, however, not from Asia or from other locations, but it is derived from Europe, from the Middle Ages. Okay, the concept was originated in the Middle Ages. We had, for example, the University of Bologna in Italy and the University of Paris, which were founded in the year 1088 and 1160 respectively. These had a secular and a Christian basis, respectively. Okay, there were many other private schools and many other different types of schools existing in Europe. However, these had mostly a religious basis. Okay, most of the teaching was imparted in Latin. Okay, and there was coaching and teaching imparted in fields such as liberal arts. And by the late 1800s, most countries in Europe and North America had made education compulsory, and literacy rates skyrocketed around 100 years ago. However, during this period, India lagged behind, and the literacy rates were hovering around the single digit mark, around 10% or so, because the British did not invest in education, even though they wanted some clerks. Okay, during the time of Macaulay and after the time of Macaulay, English education was imparted in India, but number of people who could read and write during this period were very small. So we definitely believe that the science of pedagogy is Eurocentric at this stage. We will tell you why also. And if you see theories of first language acquisition and second language acquisition, they're also Eurocentric. For example, we have theories of first language acquisition such as behavior school proposed by B.F. Skinner. This talks about reinforcement and punishment. We had the innate in a school by Noam Chomsky. It states that humans are born with the ability, innate ability to process language. We have the cognitive school by Jean Piaget. It states that the human mind constantly processes data. Okay. Interaction hypothesis we have by J.S. Brunner. This states that language is acquired as a part of human interactions. Universal grammar, according to the school of universal grammar, proposed by Noam Chomsky, all languages around the world share a universal grammar. There may be, however, minor variations. According to the input hypothesis by Stephen Krashen, language is inbuilt into pieces into people. According to the monitor model proposed by Stephen Krashen, this differentiates between formal and informal learning. The interaction hypothesis proposed by Michael Long says that language is acquired through a process of interaction. We have the output hypothesis proposed by Merrill Swain, which states that comprehensible output is the basis of learning. Critical period hypothesis was proposed by Eric Lambert in Newport, which states that humans are able to learn languages better between 3 or 12 years old. We also have the competition model proposed by Elizabeth Bates and Brian McWhinney, which talks about communicative functions forming the basis of language acquisition. We also have the concept of connectionism and second language acquisition and the noticing hypothesis. Okay. However, there are a lot of this is very, very theoretical and abstract. These may not be able to provide proper practical foundation on based on which language acquisition patterns are studied, are able to be studied. And these are all Eurocentric in orientation. There is no study of other culture. There is no ethnography as such. Okay, what exactly is ethnography? Ethnography is a combination of two words: ethnos, which refers to a culture of group of people, and grapho, which means to write. This term was first introduced in proper parlance by Johannes Friedrich Schöperlin and A.F. Tylor. Okay, and August Ludwig von Schroeder later introduced this term into academia, though in a historical concept, and eventually over a period of time, the idea of ethnography became widespread. It is a study of different types of people and cultures. Okay, usually, mostly because this was driven by Western people who found non-Western cultures quaint, exotic, sometimes primitive and barbaric. They wanted to study non-developed societies in depth. So it is also referred to portrait of peoples. Lots of a famous ethnographic work was carried out in the early part of the 20th century. For example, we had Trobriand Islander studied by Bronislaw Malisinowski, who wrote a book known as The Argonauts of the Western People. We had A.R. Radcliffe Brown, who studied the Andaman Islanders, Edmund Leach, who studied the Highlanders of Burma, Ruth Benedict, who studied chrysanthemum on the sword, Margaret Mead, who wrote a book called Growing Up in Samoa. Okay, we do agree that linguistic ethnography does exist and the field is rapidly growing now. For example, we have Penelope Eckert and others who studied language change. Stephen Levinson and others prepared a cultural model of cognition, and researchers such as John Blumart, British linguist Merrill Marion Jones, linguistic ethnographer Angela Kreis, British linguist Ben Renton, and sociologist Cecilia Roberts also heavily contributed to the field. However, it has not reached its full potential yet. Okay, linguistic ethnography needs to move to the center change, and we need not only linguistic ethnography, we need also a proper study of pedagogy. And pedagogy is ability of people to learn languages, process languages based on socio-cultural groups, socio-economic groups, occupational patterns, based on the status in society, and the ability of different cultures, people of different cultures to process and learn languages and to use language efficiently. And the link between this and the economic output needs to be studied properly. So basically, what we need here is emic perspective. There are two types of perspective. One is known as emic perspective. Emic perspective is a perspective whereby a person looks at a culture from his own perspective, so he understands his own problems much better. Perspective means a party person is giving a particular idea also. Emic perspectives are much better because it brings out the problems of an individual much more clearly, and therefore we strongly believe that intellectual awakenings are required in developing countries. We have talked about this before extensively, and we also need theories of pedagogical content, and students are smothered with unnecessary information. There is no rationalization of the syllabus, and people are not taught what is necessary. A lot of unnecessary information is taught. Like, for example, even my school or my son's school, we had Shakespeare being taught in his original form. We had Wordsworth and poetry being taught, which is mostly unnecessary. There is no correlation to what is required in the real world. Okay, and we had proposed different. Um, concepts as far as syllabus is learning. We don't, we, for example of this is maximum relevant learning principle, maximum individual psychological impact principle, alignment with learning capacity principle, maximum individual benefit for career or life principle, rational individual principle, maximum social benefit principle, maximum long-term social benefit principle, maximum international social benefit principle, antidote to proper ideologies principle, popular ideologies principle, science and pseudoscience principle, change in individual mind orientation principle, altered social behavior principle, change in uh, cultural or societal orientation principle, alteration in mind choice principle, neutralization of perspective principle, the principle of dogma, sociology of science principle, overarching knowledge principle, internal consistency principle, cultural needs principle, individual needs principle, justification for inclusion principle, intelligent learner principle, student friendly course content principle, meaningful identity formation principle, thought words and worldview principle, ideal choice of language principle, elimination of vested interests principle, etc. We had spoken about all these in length. Please read my work for further details. It would not, in the interest of time, I'm not constrained to constraints of time. I'm not able to explain it in depth here. Okay. There is also no correlation with foundational competencies. What are foundational competencies? They are the basic skills required. Okay, like it may include technical skills, non-technical skills, linguistic skills, interpersonal skills, management skills, leadership skills, innovation, creativity, etc. So you don't require only professional excellence. You require excellence knowledge, basic knowledge of other fields also. Okay, and we also require interdisciplinary approaches and transdisciplinary approaches. Transdisciplinary approaches synthesize data across a wide variety of disciplines. We need to teach scientific method, differentiate between science and pseudoscience, time and space encapsulation. For example, many people believe that the Earth is few thousand years old. Actually, the Earth is 4,500 million years old. Universe is much older than that, probably 12.8 billion years old. We have 1,200 billion planets in the Milky Way galaxy, trillions in the observable universe, etc. And we need to teach scientific origin of language and scientific origin of religion. For example, scientific origin of Hinduism, Islam, Christianity can be taught. This should provide a antidote to religion, etc. For example, when you come to language, people still believe in Tower of Babel theories that the which stated that the world only had one language. No divine origin language theory should be taught. No goddess Saraswati theory should be taught. Okay, and when we are teaching religion, we should be as objective as possible. For example, no whitewashing of religion like Islam or Hinduism should be allowed, and theories on the origin of life should be involved. For example, we have theories such as biogenesis, abiogenesis, panspermia, and to the extent Craig Winter and others have tried to create life from scratch, laboratory, they have failed. So I would like to see, as far as possible, all points of view, all viewpoints on a particular issue should be taught, and healthy debate should be encouraged, even issues which are more pertinent to the real world. Like example, people may want to debate the existence of God or not God, whether God exists or God does not exist. All such theories can be introduced in the school syllabus. Students should be freely allowed to debate with each other. We also need 21st century historiography because we believe that the historiography, the science of historiography as it exists today, is pretty much obsolete and outdated. I have written five papers on 21st century historiography. These are historiography by objectives, which includes stakeholder-based approaches and introduces 39 core objectives. I have written a paper on the core principles of 21st century historiography, and I have also written a paper on anthropological historiography with 49 additional objectives. I have written on investigative historiography and qualified historiography as well. Please go through again. I will probably make a separate video on this. We also need structured perception tests for socio-cultural change. For example, teaching of new theories, new concepts can change, alter a person's mind orientation, and in turn alter the orientation of a culture or society also. For this, we need to introduce events, and this will lead to eureka points and mini eureka points. I think you know what eureka point is. You have heard of Archimedes shouting eureka, eureka in a bathtub. Okay. For example, the basic principle here is teaching chemistry may not bring up social cultural change because it may not be an antidote. It may not override traditional or uh, traditional religious ideas. However, if you teach the origin of life or origin of language or the origin of religion or the scientific age of the earth or the size of the cosmos, then it may bring about a revolution. Okay, again, we need to bear in mind linguistic proficiency. And we need to, there's a big ongoing debate whether mother tongue or English needs to be done. For this we need to have proper language policies. Stalinist models of language development have not served us very well, even though Brezhnev and Stalin and Lenin and others supported other languages to some degrees. Russian was forcibly imposed upon other peoples in the former USSR. Same thing was attempted to be done in India, and Pakistan attempted to impose it on Bangladesh, present day Bangladesh, with disastrous consequences. And attempts need to be made to promote lexical development languages and empower what we call linguistic have-nots. It is better directly to import words from English like Malaysia. The French experiment of trying to coin words in French failed. Even Japanese use a lot of English words nowadays. We also need to understand language dynamics while framing language policy. I've written about language dynamics extensively. And as to the question of whether mother tongue or English needs to be done, we have written about this in depth. We also need to bear that it is foolhardy, foolish, and impractical to get rid of English completely at this point in time, because English elites contribute to the economy greatly. And Dalit leaders like Kanchai Leya also, he's a contemporary Dalit leader, he has supported the concept of English medium schools. However, English medium schools have some disadvantages because young children may not be able to understand what is taught in English, and we don't have proper teachers who can teach in English. Actually, I know a person who went to a so-called shambolic English medium school in a village, and he did not learn any language, neither his own language nor English nor so-called Hindi, national language Hindi. Ambedkar and Dalit leaders also stressed the importance of English. For example, Ambedkar stated, "English is the milk of the lioness. Only those who drink it will roar." And statue to English was also built in the state of Uttar Pradesh. The name of the god was Angrezi Devi, or Mother of English. It was built in Banka and Lakshmipur Keri in Uttar Pradesh. On the other hand, Hindutva groups are pro Sanskrit and they're generally anti English. However, they have to change with the times and they need to understand language dynamics. English is here to stay. Jyotiba Phule and Rajaram Mohan also have supported English. It has been over 75 years since we won independence. English is getting more and more entrenched, and we must admit that it is here to stay. The strategy, therefore, must be to allow for both mediums, but vernacular mediums must be vernacular teaching in vernacular language must be made more appealing. Okay, through lexical development of languages, even in Tamil or Telugu, Kannada, Gujarati, Hindi, Malayalam medium schools, more and more English should be taught. Okay, and lexical development of the local language must be taken up. One approach is the transferable skill approach, where as the students grow older and older, we learn more and more of English. And one more approach is to teach some subjects in English, some in the mother tongue. Okay, and we also need better teacher training both in English and other languages and technical subjects also. Automated teaching is a possibility, but for this we must bear in mind that this existing infrastructure in schools is pathetic and virtually non-existent in some areas. Some schools have no sanitation, no bathrooms, no toilets. Electricity supply is erratic. We want to introduce computer-based learnings or AI-based learnings, and we have also introduced a company called Maker Labs EduTech has introduced a AI teacher called Iris. It was introduced in Kerala and Assam, but all this will come to naught if we power supply and other issues are not addressed. We must address this in the near future. Okay, and improving pedagogy can improve economic performance, just as smart modes have also introduced improved economic performance in India. How the exact correlation of the between the two needs to be studied properly. Improving pedagogy will also encourage more and more students not to drop out, because they drop out because they cannot cope up with the syllabus and it's not child friendly and student friendly, and all these things need to be quantified. We have also introduced the theory of linguistic explanation, the theory of non-linguistic expectation, linguistic concepts such as linguistic performance, economic performance. We have also introduced concepts such as controllable factors, non-controllable factors, cultural limits, and anthropological limits. For this, please read my work on anthropological economics also. All these papers are tightly interrelated with one another. I would beseech and implore all of you to read these papers. And if you have any more doubts, please let me know. Thank you for giving me a patient hearing. I hope to make some more videos very soon.